Alright guys, welcome back to the dojo. I want to go over a few things you're going to need to know to complete this assignment properly. And I probably will send out an email to let you guys know that this video has been posted so that you can come up here and check it out. Make sure you've got what's going on. I've been messing around with the Bifrost graph editor. Of course, when I'm done doing tutorials for you guys, I do my own work in the studio. And I just started to combine it with some other ideas, sort of imagining like, alright, if I got this same assignment, or a similar assignment, how would I handle it? So as I started to play around, I started to realize there's a lot of other things we need to go over here, especially as we won't be seeing each other for, until week after next, something like that. Anyhow. So I'm going to open, and we'll look at a couple of files, but I'm going to open some files. This one, I started kind of conceptually making these relics. It sounds odd, but I did. And what I wanted to do here is I modeled this stone out of some polyhedron sphere that I sculpted, brought into Mudbox to create a higher resolution displacement map. And then I'll bring up the graph, and then I created, let's see if I can grab it, there we go, and I created this Bifrost graph and sort of started to combine my scene here together. So here's my concept and what I was envisioning. I was envisioning this collection of relics that are set up like in a gallery or a studio and photographed as if they were real objects, you know, and that's one of my specialities is realistic physics-based rendering. Again, I apologize about all the ums. I'm working on it. I'm doing my damn best. I'm gonna try. No more ums and uhs. Anyhow, so I have this stone, then I built this glass cloche and this wooden base, you know, as if it were something on display, and then I created just this curved polygon plane like a drop cloth and gave it sort of a very subtle paper texture. And then I lit the space with an area light. This is an Arnold area light and an sky dome light that has an HDRI mapped to it. So when I say render stills, I mean I want you to find interesting angles. We're going to look at this one. We're going to look at a couple of others. But we're going to look at what we need to do to really render a still here in Autodesk Maya using the Arnold render engine. So the first place we're going to look is here. We're going to open our render settings, and I'm going to set them appropriately to do the job that I need to do. So number one, I want to make certain that everyone's image format is set to EXR. Next, I want you to scroll down and make sure your color space is set to use output transform. And then I want you to set your resolution. For stills, I think 1K square is fine, and 1920 by 1080 is fine if you would prefer to do sort of horizontals or verticals. We don't want to go much below that. I'm set to 2K here for this system that I'm working on. That's really a pretty easy setting. The next thing I need you guys to do is we want to look at our Arnold renderer itself. Right now it's set to its defaults, and that's a camera anti-alias setting of 3. Diffuse 2, Spec 2, Trans 2, SSS 2, Volume Indirect 2. Y'all can all see that. It's pretty obvious. What these settings are how many times diffuse gets sampled, and then this gets multiplied by the camera anti-alias. So it's not 2, it's 3 times 2. Well, it's actually 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 cubed. And so I notice a lot of times students just leave this stuff at the default, and either their renders look really bad or their renders take really long, and none of those things are efficient. We can do a lot better than that. So what we can do is we can set up something called AOVs to help us decide where the noise in our render is happening and where we need to clean things up. And we can also decide what we need to turn on and what we need to turn off, and where we need to increase samples and where we need to decrease samples. So let's look at my shot again. Let's full screen this, move this over a little bit. I have this stone it's like an 8K texture. It is a little bit extreme. However, my work needs to be pretty photorealistic. Sorry. We've got this. It's all pretty simple geometry. The complexity really comes from the Bifrost graph network itself. And I used, of course, I'll pull it up again just in case you guys want to see. I used the create strands around strands compound within this network to kind of play around and create something interesting. The other thing I did is I took my actual stone texture and I projected it from my camera onto these strands on strands. Now that's something that's a little bit more complex for another demo. However, it's going to allow it to look like the texture is sort of seamlessly or semi-seamlessly transitioning from the stone onto the Bifrost graph strand shapes. So back to brass tacks here. I've got a sky dome light. I want to make certain that my samples are set to a minimum of 3. Generally, actually, my favorite is about 4 for this sort of work. I have an AI area light, and no matter what kind of area light we use, I want my samples set to a minimum of 3. Again, I set mine to 4. All these other settings are kind of inconsequential. I think I might do a separate demo on just lighting. And now, I need to look at my materials. I have a glass material, a wood material, a stone material, the the Bifrost graph strand material, which is a normal AI standard surface material that's meant to look like it's kind of mimicking the stone, and then this paper material. So the reason I'm bringing this up is I have to know what materials I have in my scene and what physical properties I'm trying to sort of mimic. So if I were to look at the shader here for this glass dome, boom, I would see that I have clear transmission, no subsurface scattering, and I have it set to, I left thin walled off. There was that damn again. It's a pretty simple, straightforward glass material, meant to be clear, reflective. I don't have any maps for smudges or anything that I brought over from someplace like Adobe Substance. This is straight up just clear glass. So I know then that I need to sample transmission because my transmission is set to 1 to allow light to transmit through the glass. Anytime I have transparency in my scene, I want to sample transmission. I of course need to sample diffuse. That's basically our albedo or our surface color here. Specular is how shiny things are. Well, my glass is shiny. My stone has a bit of shininess to it if we look at the stone texture here. And don't worry, these I normally, mine are already, this is our sample file. Mine are renamed. This is good file hygiene. I don't want you guys to see me doing it as we're creating them. So I have my stone base albedo sample. So this is basically a rock. It's a rock. It's got a little bit of specularity, but it's got a lot of color. It's not transmissive. So I think we're okay here. We'll see how things look. Now, subsurface scattering. Subsurface scattering is an important thing. If I want to mimic light entering a semi-translucent object that is sort of, I guess the best way to describe it, filled with a light-absorbing material, what we call a light ablative material, like the human ear, jello, wax, jade, things like that. Light enters those sorts of materials, ricochets around, and exits back out. It looks very different than other sorts of transmission. That's known as subsurface scattering, like when the light goes behind a human ear and the ear turns that blood red, we can kind of see the light through it. That is an example of subsurface scattering. I do not have any of that in my scene. None of my materials are showing any subsurface scattering. I don't have it enabled for any. I need to turn that sampling to 0. I do not want the processor or the program thinking about and sampling and looking for things that don't exist. It's simply going to make my render take longer, and it won't help anything. Similarly, volume indirect. You guys probably don't even know what this is, but if we had a volumetric material in our scene, like an environmental volume or a cloud or something like that, those are volumes, gases, and some liquids. I don't have anything like that in my scene again, and I'm generally going to turn that down to 0. And so now we're just stuck back at our default camera, anti-alias setting of 3, diffuse 2, specular 2, transmission of 2. These might be fine, they might not. We'll find out in a second. However, before we even go back and start to render anything, I need to set one more thing for proper rendering, and that is ray depth. These default ray depths of diffuse, specular, and transmission are not appropriate to a production quality render, the sort of render that I want from you guys. I need you to set diffuse to a minimum of 4, specular to a minimum of 4, and transmission, if you have any, to a minimum of 10. Once you do that, it'll allow the rays to trace into the scene at an appropriate depth to, sorry, that's the Corgi Luna letting me know that there's a human somewhere near our door. Anyhow, so these samples will allow the rays to penetrate deep enough into the scene to do an appropriate amount of bouncing around and coming back out and hitting the camera with the appropriate and proper color detail. So once we've set those up, I want to set one other thing up, and this is going to help me immensely figure out where my problems lie. And that is on this tab called AOVs. AOVs allow us to set up and sort of split our render apart into different bits so that I can see how everything looks. I'll show you the main 3 or 4 AOVs that we want to set up. One is diffuse, so I'll highlight diffuse and then I'll hit this arrow and it'll put diffuse in my active AOV column. Now diffuse is an active AOV. I'll also do specular, and let's do transmission. Those are the 3 things, again, if we go back here, that we're sampling: diffuse, specular, and transmission. So I might as well make those AOVs active. Now we can close our Arnold renderer, and our render is ready to go. Now I'm going to stop this video here, and in the next video we're going to actually do the render and take a look at what those things do. Hey, remember to smash that like button and subscribe.